What's happening, guys? Happy Sunday and happy Father's Day while joining the Dynasty WarZone, the People's Dynasty podcast. On today's show, we've got more Dynasty Hot Takes for you, maybe a little bit of news coming out of mandatory minicamp, but I have some news. No Jerry this week. He got caught up at that real job, that pesky real job that he has to have to pay the bills. But I've got an amazing guest. We were already planning on having an amazing guest, and we'll introduce him right now. His name is Jason Allwine, and you can find him at JFootballWine on X. He is the social media director for Player Profiler, and he is the host of two podcasts, not one but two. He does Wake and Take every day. This guy does daily content. He also hosts Trade Gods with our buddy Matty Kiwoom. And Jason, I want to welcome you to the show, but I have questions.
Yeah, go ahead.
No. First of all, welcome to the show. I always like to go over the guest Twitter bio because I feel like if you've put that in your bio, there's something there.
Yeah.
Now you're a Georgia State graduate, which is very cool, but you're an Atlanta Press Club member.
Yeah.
What is that? Tell me about.
Honestly, dude, to be completely honest, it's just one of those things that I thought would look good on a resume. It's like a $15 membership fee, and you really don't even have to do anything for it. That's kind of it. You get invited to events, and you could, rub elbows and stuff if you'd like. I've only gone to one of those events, but, I just thought it looked cool, right? Live in Atlanta, do a little press stuff.
Dude, Atlanta's a nice city. I know there are certain areas, like all cities, that you want to try to avoid, but Atlanta's great. Great airport. So many connections down there. There's a lot to like, and good football. Now, I think, would you agree it's more of a college football town with the Bulldogs than the Falcons?
Yeah. Georgia in general is just a very college football state. Like growing up, there were not many NFL fans in general in my school. It was you're either a Alabama fan, Auburn fan, Georgia Tech fan. And that was kind of it, to be completely honest. There were a couple Falcons fans sprinkled here and there, but no, it is a very big. Here in the South, college football is definitely king.
Well, football is definitely king at Player Profiler, and you're our social media director. Kind of goes without saying what that would entail, but tell us what's going on with your daily show, Wake and Take, and then what you and old Matty Kiwoom have cooking up on Trade Gods.
Yeah, so basically Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. Eastern, I just hop on here and usually we're talking the news. For pretty much every episode is going to have a little bit of news in it, and then sometimes we'll do hot takes, sometimes we'll do rankings, sometimes we'll do drafts, really whatever is going on in the morning, because it's sometimes tough to come up with content, so sometimes it could just be buys, sells. We sprinkle in all the stuff that goes on in fantasy football, but it's a fun show. The chat is always incredible. I see a lot of them here already with the Harry Snowman and Rubio and Liv I've seen as well. So everyone, it's a great community, great show. Love doing that. So highly recommend that. And then Trade Gods, another just incredible show. Matty Kiwoom, you guys probably know about him. An incredible host, pros pro, and being able to do a show with him is just awesome. Pretty much all we do is talk about the fantasy football market, whether it be buys, sells, trades that we've made in our own league, stuff like that. And it's also just a really great show with some interesting tidbits and great ways to attack trading in your leagues.
Well, I'm a big fan. I've been on both shows. Mm-hmm. I've been on Matty's other show, The Game Plan. That's the one cool thing we were talking about before I hit the record button, is that we have all these resources and other content creators here at the Player Profiler family of shows, and it's great to be able to mix and match, and because everybody has like your favorite TV show that spun off of another show, and it's great to see the guests bouncing back and forth. So it's a real pleasure in having you. I thank you for coming in. Jerry was supposed to be here. Don't take that personal. Jerry going to Jerry, and we love Jerry. But let's get our one commercial out of the way.
Okay.
And then we'll come back, and we're going to cover something a little bit unique. So we'll jump into that after a word from the Dynasty Dominator.
Now, I know many of you are looking for a secret weapon for your Dynasty League, and I have it. It's called the Dynasty Dominator app. You go to the App Store, go to Google Play. It's right there. It's $5 to download, and then every year it's $5 to load the next incoming class of rookies. You can add Superflex, add tight end premium. It's incredible because it allows you to look up players. It allows you to vote on whether a player is a buy, hold, or sell, and then see the market sentiment on that player. And you can compare their lifetime value rating from Player Profiler to their Dynasty ADP at the FFPC, all in the price lookup tool. And beyond that, we have a trade analyzer, so you'll never lose another Dynasty trade again. And in our settings, you can set this is a win now team, this is a rebuilding team, and then we let you compare players. Look at their metrics side by side, prospect metrics, NFL metrics. It's all there. It's $5 in the App Store. There's some add-ons for Superflex and to buy the upcoming rookie class. Every year, you're going to spend $5 on this thing, and it's going to be well worth it.
It is a fine tool, and here's the thing, no matter what it is, whether it's the Dynasty Dominator app, a shovel, it doesn't really matter what the tool is that if you don't have it and it's not easy to use. And that's the one thing about the Dynasty Dominator is it's super easy to use. And we all love Player Profiler, whether you're on your laptop, your office computer, but it's just nice sometimes to have that tool in your hand, pause, and be able to go to work. And it's great. $5, can't beat it. All right, we're going to jump into, normally this would be good people, bad tweets, or good people, bad trades.
Okay.
You can tell we're in a slow part of the season. So I thought what you and I would do was they're wrapping up mandatory minicamp. Mm-hmm. And after this week, really, it's going to be pretty dead. The NFL considers this quote unquote summer vacation. Yeah. So a lot of coaches, players, they'll get that last family time in. And then we'll start getting camp in about 5 weeks. So, but there were a couple of decent sized stories this week. And the first one I want to hit you with, and it's going to be a bit of a surprise, is Joe Burrow. Is that Joe Burrow is not cleared for contact, which caught me. I mean, I knew he was coming back from the ligament thing in his wrist. Not only is he not cleared for contact, he won't be cleared for contact until September. And then he's the first quarterback in the history of the NFL to have this surgery. So with all those news and nuggets, we didn't want to call this one news or noise because we're going to get Jason's hot takes here in a bit. But what does that do for you, not only from a dynasty, but from a 2024 standpoint with Joe Burrow? Are you nervous? Are you scared?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely makes you a little nervous. At the end of the day, I'm still probably going to be betting on that player, especially with T. Higgins finally signing that franchise tender and Jamar Chase still being there. Even if he's not 100% to start the season, I do think he'll be 100% at some point in the season and probably earlier than not. But, hearing all this at least kind of makes the Jake Browning extension make a little bit more sense as they signed him to that 2-year extension at the end of the season. So maybe they did think that it might take some time for Joe Burrow to return to the field and be clear for contact. I'll say with a wrist injury, it kind of makes sense, even if it doesn't seem like a big injury. Like if you are falling, like say even if it's a soft hit, you use your wrist to keep yourself from falling, and you could easily re-aggravate that injury. So I'm sure that that's probably part of it in terms of, maybe he's like his whole body's healthy, but just they don't want to risk him like falling on it funky or something like that. Like we really don't know. And especially with him picking up what hit like that calf strain in the camps last year, they're probably just taking it as easy as they can with their, highest paid quarterback in the NFL.
We can actually. Wow. I had a couple of transitions off of the Joe Burrow story. I will say with the Joe Burrow news, any one of those pieces of news by themselves doesn't really concern me.
Yeah.
But when you start stacking them on top of each other and you're building them like Legos, that makes me a little bit more nervous. I'm still in on Joe Burrow for Dynasty. Yeah. Going to be really good. You mentioned T. Higgins signed the tender. They brought in the rookie Jermaine Burton. Jermaine, that's the right one.
Yeah.
So obviously Jamar Chase. Of course, this is a pro Mike Gesicki podcast. So there's still plenty of weapons, but I'm still nervous. I tell you what, he's not technically the highest paid quarterback anymore because a certain gentleman with beautiful hair.
Yes.
Not as good as yours, but he has nice hair.
I don't know about that.
Trevor Lawrence, man, he got a $275 million deal. For me, that didn't really do a bunch for Dynasty. I mean, we knew he was going to get extended. I don't think the dollar amount translates to Dynasty value. You?
Yeah, we like contracts in Dynasty, right? It gives you a little bit more. You're a bit more comfortable when you see those contracts come in, like, because you can basically put like an expiration date on your asset, be like, oh, well, you know, he's under contract till this point, so he's probably playing that point. And that's really the story we always tell ourselves. And when you get that kind of confirmation from a franchise, it always makes you feel good. But I am with you in that there's certain players to where that really shouldn't increase their value. Like, we all knew this was coming for Trevor Lawrence. We all know this is probably coming for like a Jordan Love. We knew it was probably coming for Jared Goff this offseason, just a couple months ago. So it's just like, when we know it's coming, I don't think that we should increase our value, but of course we do. And I do think, I guess, to also answer maybe the follow-up, is just he probably did deserve that money. He really did.
I think, as you guys know, I'm not the biggest fan of Tua. Anyone listens to this show for any amount of time, I'm not the world's largest Tua fan. But I will say this. Tua made a very cool statement the other day when he said the market is the market.
Yes.
You know, Trevor Lawrence doesn't set the market. You know, the market is set, and then you're always trying to get as close to the top guy if you're in that range. And this is going to impact guys like Dak. It's going to impact Tua. It's going to impact a lot of guys. From a dynasty standpoint, I dig it. You know, he's not going anywhere. They have the contract in place, so they know how to build around him, continue to put weapons around him. I'm not raising him up my personal dynasty rankings, but it is that little nod of confidence.
Exactly.
But I do want to go to a guy that I'm not quite as confident in, and a guy that I want to, because I'm rooting for the dynasty asset, because I'm not rooting for the team and I'm not rooting for the guy. But it's Deshaun Watson. And it's come out of camp that he has not been I mean, he's been participating, but he's not looked great. They signed two backups. Jameis Winston is the number one backup. And then they brought in Tyler Huntley, who was a Pro Bowl backup of all things for Lamar Jackson a couple of years ago. And most teams, I understand, with the way the rule changes are, you can, designate that third emergency QB on game day. I understand. So there may be some strategy there. I want to be in on Deshaun Watson as a fantasy player. I just can't bring myself to do it right now. There's concerns about the shoulder. There's concerns about the off field. Don't know what's going with Amari Cooper. It feels like red flag after red flag after red flag with Deshaun Watson. What say you, Jay?
I'm with you. Generally, I am so big on buying distressed assets and just people that have lost a ton of fantasy value, especially ones like Deshaun Watson, who at one point were a top 5 asset and was just lighting the world on fire. And he gets that massive contract and we think that we're going to see it again. And he just hasn't. And I am in firm belief that with athletes, it's just, you have it until you don't, and it could be mental that you lose, or it could be physical. And to me, I think he's lost some of that mental tenacity that made him the athlete that he was, whether it be toughness, whether it be everything clouding his judgment from off the field or what, but he just doesn't seem like the same quarterback. And I think everything from off the field honestly has affected his on the field play. And I really don't know if it's ever going to come back. Like it just doesn't seem there. Like he's got the money. He has no motivation really. He's already, disdained in the public image. It's just like, those are the type of things, the head cases, if you will, that are just so hard to invest in. It doesn't seem like it's going to happen.
Yeah. And I think we oftentimes with players, especially players that came out with a big college pedigree and guys that were super interested in, I think we get invested. And we saw him beat Alabama at Clemson, and he had a couple of great years. But we have to evaluate these guys not on where they were, but where they're going. That's kind of where I'm at. And I don't like the trend of where I see his career going. So if you can get out for a fair price, obviously you'd be looking for, I'd be looking at one of these rookies. Can I get even Michael Penix Jr.? stash him. I'm a big Michael Penix guy. I think he'll be the starter next year. I know it sounds crazy to say. I'm a big Michael Penix guy. But speaking of rookie quarterbacks, one that I don't think we'll see the field a bunch, at least not early in the season, is going to be J.J. McCarthy. Head coach Kevin O'Connell came out the other day and said Sam Darnold going into camp as the starter, as to be predicted. We kind of talked about this at the draft house during the NFL draft. But does Sam Darnold being named the quote-unquote starter in June, does that give us a buying window on J.J. McCarthy in Dynasty?
I think it does. I really think it does. I think that one thing that happened over rookie draft season is that J.J. McCarthy jumped Drake May. And I think that that's been a little bit quiet that happened, because the reason that he vaulted over Drake May is that everyone was expecting him to start, pretty quickly and probably be pretty good immediately. And now it's looking like the case that he'll probably be sitting on the bench to start the year. Now, here's the deal. Me and you both know this. Sam Darnold's going to turn into a pumpkin probably pretty quickly. He might show a couple flashes, but Sam Darnold is who he is at this point in his career. And even with, I'm sure that Kevin O'Connell and Kyle Shanahan had a discussion before they made the trade. I mean, they have a friendship from their coaching days together. Or not the trade, just the signing, right? Before, like, hey, should I sign Sam Darnold? Do you give the co-sign? I'm sure even with that, even with the fully guaranteed contract, there's just Sam Darnold is who he is at this point. And J.J. McCarthy is going to start eventually and probably be pretty damn good.
The best case, if you're a Sam Darnold guy, which I am, he was the one who broke me of being a fan of players. But Sam Darnold, him and Russell Wilson, Russell Wilson didn't pick Seattle if there wasn't assurances in place. Hey, you're going to be our starter going into the season. We'll figure it out after that. There's a wide range of outcomes with this, but I like any of this news that will allow us to go get a cheap young asset. And if you still have Sam Darnold, I've been trying to package him up to the McCarthy GM. Hey, give me a third. Give me anything. Hey, if you're counting on McCarthy in any way, this way you can have both, because I don't say the worst case scenario for McCarthy, but it is that, to your point, Sam Darnold starts off hot in a very quarterback-friendly offense with very good weapons around him, and he doesn't give it back. And then maybe you get that 1-year redshirt season with McCarthy, but at any rate, I am very much in on using this to get J.J. McCarthy. All right, one last bit of news, and we're going to start letting you fire off some hot takes. Came out this week that Travis Kelce, when asked about retirement, said he's going to rock it till the wheels fall off. And a lot of us play in tight end premium leagues. Yep. He was the unquestioned tight end one for practically half a decade. And he's still probably top 6, 7, even at his age. How much longer do you think that Kelce is going to play? How long can we feel safe about him on our dynasty rosters?
I am taking him completely at his word. I think he finishes out this contract through 2025. I think we get 2 more years of Travis Kelce. Whether or not that 2025 season is, elite Travis Kelce or kind of like a faded out Rob Gronkowski type season, that's yet to be seen. But I really do believe Kelce wants to play football as long as he can. And barring injury, I really can't think of a reason why he's not out there, at least finishing out his contract, and maybe even signing another one, depending on how he's playing.
I could see them continuing to rework it to give him more money. Doesn't mean they won't pay for it down the line, but I think that's maybe there's been some assumptions about Travis Kelce. Obviously he's got a famous girlfriend. Mm-hmm. His brother recently retired. But we have to handle all these things individually. And I think at the end of the day, Travis Kelce loves football.
Yes.
And he loves playing football.
Yep.
And he's been super healthy and super durable. If you're a contender and you have a league mate who's a little nervous about Kelce's long-term usage, go out and see what you can get him for. You may be able to get him cheap. I don't know how cheap, but I just think there's this assumption that he's a party. Like, he's almost turned into Gronk, because Gronk was a celebrity off the field, and now because of Taylor Swift, Kelce is too. I think the guy's a badass football player, and I think you got 2 more years for him.
Yeah, I like it. It looks like you could give like George Kittle or Jake Ferguson for him right now, according to Keep Trade Cut. So
I would gladly give you Jake Ferguson. And, I love George Kittle. George Kittle is a really good tight end, but, man, he's streaky like a dirty window. Mm-hmm. One game he may give you 4 PPR points. The next game he may give you 28. Yeah. And I would much rather have someone much more consistent like a Travis Kelce or an Evan Ingram. So if you can get out of the George Kittle, and he's no spring chicken. No. He's around 30 himself. Yeah. So it would be a great way to improve your tight end premium rosters. So there you go. Didn't have any bad trades, but if you guys see bad trades, you can send them to my DMs at DWZ Memphis on Twitter or email the show, dynastywarzone@gmail.com, because you guys help produce the show. You guys have a good trade, a bad trade you want covered. You see a tweet, fire it off to me. And no Dana White this week. Let's go with the Macho Man.
Oh, sorry. Just give a hot take? Just a hot take out here?
Just a hot take right now.
All right.
We're going to go with we brought you in with the Macho Man. So you're the cream. The cream rises to the top. Give us your first hot take going into the 24 Dynasty season.
All right. We'll start a little lower, and we'll work our way up. And we'll start with Justin Fields at the very worst takes the starting job from Russell Wilson by week 10. At the very worst, they have the week 9 bye. He's named starter heading into that bye week, and then he takes it over the rest of the season. That's worst case scenario. He's taking that thing from Russ.
Well, you and I are in total alignment. So last week when I had Theo, Jerry was here. We had Theo Grimminger, the director of content for Player Profiler, on. That was one that I brought up. Much like it's the same but different than JJ McCarthy. Mm-hmm. We know we're going to get Russ. And Russ is shot. I think you can go back. I think you can go back to the last season in Seattle. And that was, we're all dynasty gamers and like to make dynasty trades. That trade that Seattle made to send Russell Wilson to Denver might have been one of the great all-time fleece jobs of all time. I'm sure the Texans would like a word on the Deshaun Watson trade in that deal, but what a great trade for them. But yeah, I don't know how, if you're Mike Tomlin, and kudos to him, he's never had a losing season as a head coach. We all know that, right? We've been reminded probably 6 years in a row. But I don't know how you can go in there every game with a Russell Wilson after seeing him the last few years and think that's the guy who's going to beat Joe Burrow. And that's the guy who's going to beat Lamar Jackson. And if he's healthy, that's the guy who's going to beat Deshaun Watson. I don't see it. So what are you going to do? To your point, I think it takes to week 8. They're going to go to the upside guy, see what we got, because he's going to be a free agent at the end of the year. I don't know how you can't get Justin Fields involved. And once he plays, how well do you think he'll be able to play in this offense?
I mean, so this is the offensive coordinator, Arthur Smith, right? Like, say what you want about him as a head coach. He has had success as an offensive coordinator. Some might say it was Derrick Henry, but still Derrick Henry honestly didn't really break out until Arthur Smith got his hands on him. But really the story with his offense was Ryan Tannehill being able to be a very efficient passer with a little bit of wheels to add, right? Justin Fields is just an electric athlete on an offense that's, going to be run heavy, but Arthur Smith's a very creative play caller. Again, say what you will about as him as a head coach, but a very creative play caller. And he definitely knows how to scheme, quarterback success at the very least. I mean, say Desmond Ridder last year, terrible in the turnover department, but he was some of the way the plays were running, he had ample opportunity to success the fantasy quarterback and even had some stealing weeks. We saw it from Marcus Mariota too. Right. And he's terrible, but it's just this system has been pretty conducive to fantasy quarterback success. And notice that I said fantasy quarterback success, right? Ryan Tannehill is still bad. Marcus Mariota is still bad. Desmond Ridder is still bad. But at the very least, he translates to fantasy points, whether it be from running, short little dump offs, giving the ball to the player in space, or anything really. But I think that it's going to be designed very well, and maybe even around Justin Fields for him to succeed, maybe even more as a runner. Like whereas the Bears tried to go away from it, I could very much see the Steelers trying to lean into it. So either way, I think it's going to be good for fantasy. I'm still not sure if I'm sold on him as a passer. Last year, he did, of course, take some strides forward, actually finally having a weapon. So I do think he could at least be okay, right?
Well, and the Arthur Smith naysayers don't get to live in revisionist history, because before he got fired from Atlanta, what was the team that everybody said they should trade Justin Fields to? It was Atlanta.
Yep.
Trade him to Atlanta. You wanted him traded to Atlanta when Arthur Smith was there.
Yep.
What's changed? Arthur Smith is a way better offensive coordinator, and some guys aren't ready for the head job. Yep. And that's okay, but he's really good at what he does. I mentioned this last week, and even the way he used Ryan Tannehill in the rushing game.
Yep.
I don't think that if you're a Justin Fields believer, and I've lived on Twitter the last 3 years, there's a lot of you out there that this is the best case scenario for him. I don't know that it's as good as Drake London and Bijan Robinson and Kyle Pitts, but I do think Pickens and Freiermuth and Najee Harris and that offensive line are going to give him a chance. So we agree on Justin Fields taking that job, and I think he's one of the. And I mentioned this for our patrons. I do a Patreon podcast every single Monday. They get this show early and ad free. So you don't like commercials, you don't want to wait until Wednesday to hear the Dynasty Warzone, sign up at patreon.com/Dynasty Warzone, and you'll get it on Monday evenings with a little something extra. And that was one of the things that I gave the patrons last week is I'm not going into 2024 in my Superflex leagues with a Derek Carr, a Baker Mayfield. I'm not going into 2023 with that kind of guy as my QB3. I am looking for a Justin Fields as my QB3. Would love it to be a 4, but I'm going into the season with Will Levis as my QB3. I want a guy, and I called it the Jordan Love rule. I want a guy who can go from Dynasty QB 20 or worse, and a year from now can be a potential top 10 quarterback, or whatever position, but in this case, quarterback, at the position if things break right. Because that's what happened with Jordan Love. Jordan Love right now is around QB9 in a dynasty startup. That's what I'm looking for. I'm not going to hold these old dusty guys, and that's coming from the OG Justin Fields hater. What do you think about that philosophy of making sure your QB3, even on a contender, needs to be a guy with some upside? Because I'm not really trying to live with Derek Carr and 15 points a game.
I like it because honestly, something I'm starting to play around with a bit more in my Superflex is you don't have to start a quarterback in your Superflex, So I don't mind taking that swing and just hoping that upside pans out, and you can just go right back to the well the next year.
and if you have a quarterback that's I don't say injury prone, but maybe a Joe Burrow or a Deshaun Watson, it would probably be wise to get their handcuff now.
Exactly.
So you get, and when I say now, I mean June, July. If you wait till the injury happens, you're going to pay triple what you should be moving. You would be paying triple. Whereas if you just go get them now, and I wouldn't do that for both my quarterbacks, because hopefully you don't have 2 or 3 injury prone or guys who've had injury battles. You'd love to have like a Patrick Mahomes or a Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, who are just a tank. And then you can have that other guy who's a little bit more risky. And then you have this QB3 guy that, and Harry just mentioned Sam Darnold in the chat. If you need a third quarterback, go get Sam Darnold for a couple of weeks, or wait until and go trade for someone else's handcuff. But have that guy that can pop off, and Justin Fields fills that bill. All right, that was pretty hot. This is you ever watch that show where they eat like the buffalo wings?
Yeah.
And they gradually get hotter. Yeah. Is that what we're going to do with your takes?
Yes, we are.
I love it. I absolutely love it. So let's go with number 2. What is your number 2 hot take for this episode?
Memphis Young, did you know that Justin Herbert is going off as the quarterback 17 right now in underdog drafts?
It's a crime. It's a friggin' crime.
So Justin Herbert, outside of last year, where he only played in 13 games, has finished top 6 in passing yards his first 3 seasons in the NFL. 6th as a rookie and 2nd the next 2 seasons. One of the best starts to a career we've ever seen. Last year, of course, he got hurt, but was actually still on pace for over 4,000 passing yards with no weapons outside of Keenan Allen. He has so much talent. And Memphis, I say to you that right now, Justin Herbert not only finishes top 8 in pass yards, but also as a top 8 fantasy quarterback this season.
I am totally in. This is where people create narratives that go with a take. Well,
Yes.
All Greg Roman does is run. Well, that's true when all he has is quarterbacks who are better at running than throwing.
Lamar Jackson.
Yeah. I like to think of offensive coordinators, especially ones that continue to get jobs. And listen, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that they're going to be the Vikings who threw it like 636 times last year. But the Chargers last year only threw it. I'm sorry, I'm looking at points right now. Let me switch over this because you said that. The Chargers last year were 3rd in attempts. Now, that was the Kellen Moore offense. But if it goes from 632 to the middle of the pack, 579, we're talking about a 1 to 1.5 attempts per game. Mm-hmm. We're losing our mind. Like all of a sudden, it's going to become 1994 football, and they're just going to pound Gus Edwards up the middle. Yeah, I like it. I think Josh Palmer is one of the most undervalued guys. I would not be shocked if that guy has a wide receiver 20. And by the way, just to piggyback on all this, is it, Jason, in your humble opinion, is it fair to say that the team here at Player Profiler is not a pro Quentin Johnston shop?
Yeah, we're not big Quentin Johnston fans here.
But Quentin Johnston, in a very murky, weird, ambiguous situation, he's currently on Player Profiler. He's in the 70s in your dynasty. And listen, I didn't like him. I still don't like him. But that's that kind of lottery ticket that you keep on the back end of your bench because he was a first-round NFL pick. And if he has any kind of flash, his value is maybe going to go from 70-something to 30-something. And then you can move him. Yeah. And it could be a lot of guys. But, no, I love this take because people have gotten so crazy. The other thing I'm curious to see is how they involve rushing for Justin Herbert because he's a big dude.
Yeah,
he's 6'6", 245. I mean, he's similar size to a Josh Allen. Now he's not the runner that Josh Allen is, but what if he chips in with like 5 or 6 rushing touchdowns? What if they take a guy this size and start incorporating like a tush push type play for him around the goal line? Is it a stretch for us to sit here and say he adds 30 to 42 PPR points because you get 6 points for a rushing touchdown over the course of a season? Is that crazy to say?
I don't think so. I mean, 200 rush yards and 5 touchdowns as a rookie, 300 rush yards and 3 touchdowns the next year. In 2022, he had the broken ribs that he played through, so only 147 rush yards. And last year, still over 203 touchdowns. So, yeah, I mean, to your point about Greg Roman having Lamar Jackson, Jim Harbaugh had Colin Kaepernick, J.J. McCarthy at Michigan. Like, I do think that these are some smart guys that even if Justin Herbert's not the most mobile, that they could use some of their experience with a mobile quarterback in the past to still work that into their offense, even if it's not a ton. I mean, he has some wheels. He runs a 4.68 at 6'6", 240 pounds. That's a big dude with some speed. So, like, yeah, I could actually see it. And that isn't even something I thought about as being a top 8 fantasy quarterback. But I like that call as well. I think that's an extra thing that we should be looking out for with him.
Yeah. I mean, if you're going to go, and I kind of look at it from both sides. Yes, I do think, like I said, they're not going to be the Vikings. The Vikings threw the ball all over the yard. The Lions too. I don't think they're going to do that. But I don't think they're going to turn into the worst offense from a passing standpoint. Like, by the way, from a pass attempt standpoint last year, do you know who finished last?
Like that started a certain amount? Or
No, just the team. So out of all 32 teams, Who was 32nd in pass attempts last year?
I'm just going to say the Falcons, but that might not be right.
It was Brock Purdy.
Interesting.
Who yes, the 49ers only attempted 491 passes.
Yeah.
And where'd Brock Purdy finish from a fantasy standpoint? Was it QB 10, 8?
It was somewhere, like right around there. I feel like it couldn't have been worse than 12.
I mean, it wouldn't shock you if I told you 26 was the Giants and 27 was the Bears, 28 was the Broncos, 29 was the Steelers, 30 was the Ravens. There's another really good offense that only attempted 494 pass attempts. It's, yes, you would love more volume, but it's what you do with them.
Exactly.
And I understand there's no George Kittle, Brandon Ayuk, Debo, Christian. I get it. But the overall point is that there's as much that can go right as go wrong. So I absolutely love that one. Well, I want to pitch one more product for the Player Profiler family, and then we're going to come back and we're going to get your two hottest Dynasty takes going into the 2024 season.
This episode is brought to you by Player Profiler, the Dynasty Deluxe package. The rankings are the best in the industry. It includes strategy mode where you can say, hey, change the rankings to be win now. Oh, change the rankings to be productive struggle. There's also a draft planner to help strategize where you should take players because the draft planner also includes ADP. There's a trade finder where we look up on My Fantasy League and we see trades that are done, including a particular player. Then there's a trade analyzer where you can plug in draft picks, players, and we assign a lifetime value to draft picks out 5 years. The best thing about our trade analyzer, it can't be gamed with volume. And there's mock draft data to see right now what's the market for player X versus player Y, including in the fall when very few mock drafts are happening. And our Dynasty guide, the Dynasty Dominator, would cost you $10 on Amazon, but you get it for free with Dynasty Deluxe, and you get our rookie guide for free, a $25 value. So you get all of that for $45. I mean, it's a great deal.
Yes, it most certainly is. So we are coming up on some of your hottest takes of the Dynasty offseason. I'm going to give you a break for a minute, and I'm just going to ask you your thoughts on my guy, Will Levis. I haven't been tweeting a ton of fantasy football stuff. Mm-hmm. I've been tweeting a ton of high school baseball stuff on another handle. But I tweeted out today that I've got to slow down on my Will Levis takes for 2024. And then I was like, also me. And it was a picture of a guy just going crazy at a concert. And I'm drinking the Kool-Aid, man. I'm all in. I think between Calvin Ridley, DeAndre Hopkins, Okonkwo, I like Pollard more than Tajay Spears, but you got two running backs. They drafted an offensive lineman. And I really love the fact that they brought in it's not Dave Canellis. It was the guy who came from the Bengals.
Right,
and Callahan, thank you. And his dad's like one of the best offensive line coaches in the entire league. I just see all of these boxes as checked.
Yep.
And they're in a division they're going to have to keep up. And it's not the Mike Vrabel Titans anymore. If there was a team that could go from the least amount of pass attempts to being challenging for the most, I could easily see where that would be a Titans. I just wanted to get your thoughts on Levis.
Yeah, I am investing in every Tennessee Titan, to your point, but especially Will Levis. I do like what Corey Walters says in the chat, that this is a put up or shut up year for Will Levis. I think he's going to have every opportunity to succeed this year. And again, to your point, I do see this being a very, very pass happy offense. You don't replace Derrick Henry with Tony Pollard and have Tajay Spears as your other running back, and then go invest in the secondary by bringing in Algerius Sneed and invest in the offensive line and bring in Callahan and bring in Calvin Ridley. You don't do all those things unless you want to pass the ball. So I think there's going to be a ton of volume there for Will Levis next season. And if he does, I mean, he doesn't even have to be very good, right? Like, I think if he could just like have minimal turnovers, he's probably a long-term starter for this team, and they continue to build around him. So this is an easy dynasty buy for me. He's like quarterback 22 or something like that. And easy buy.
You know, and you mentioned Callahan, his new head coach who called the offensive coordinator in Cincinnati, even though they lost Joe Burrow halfway through the season, and they brought in Browning, They were still 7th in total pass attempts last year with 615. That's a big number. And I expect a lot more volume. And you may start thinking about, hey, these guys won't shut up about Will Levis, and it's not going to stop anytime soon. But you may start thinking about, whoa, because I just did. Whoa, 615 pass attempts. So let's just round down to 600. Well, there's 600 pass attempts. There's going to be a lot of PPR value in this offense. Yeah. Is it Calvin Ridley? Is it Hopkins? I don't know, but Tennessee Titans are cheap right now. Yes. And this could be the offense we turn around and look at 12 months from now and going, oh, how did we not see that sooner? Yep. So I like it, but you owe us 2 more hot takes, my guy. You owe us your second most spicy, and then you gotta wrap this thing up with a big one.
Okay, we'll go with. You know what? Rubio has kind of inspired me here in the chat. I wasn't going to talk Ryan Flournoy on today's show, but I've decided I'm going to talk Ryan Flournoy on today's show. And the Dallas Cowboys drafted their future wide receiver 2 this year in the draft in the 6th round with that guy out of Southeast Missouri State. This is a player with size and speed. He runs the 4.4 40-yard dash. He has the 6'1", 200 pounds. He's got production at all college levels. He started D2, and then in COVID years, stuff went wrong. He had to go to JUCO. He tore his ACL and recovered, and then went to D1 and led his team in receiving in back-to-back years, winning all conference honors. He stood out at the Senior Bowl, got a late combine invite, stood out at the combine. You know, he's got Chris Carter mentoring him now somehow, right? It's like all of this stuff is kind of adding up with him. He had a 3.9 GPA, I read. He made the college football freaks list by The Athletic heading into last season as well. His head coach called him the hardest worker he's ever had. This is a player that I think is going to start standing out. We actually heard some camp room chatter from him. The voice of the star tweeted out that he's already turning some heads and making some splash plays. I know it's late draft capital, but this is a very hard worker. He broke out a little late. He was actually a 0-star high school recruit because he was less than 5'10", less than 200 pounds, and just grew up late. But I think that this is a player that the Cowboys are very, very happy to have. And in such a shoddy wide receiver room, I think he's easily going to establish himself as the wide receiver 2. Go get him for free right now.
I like this one because, again, the numbers are the numbers. You know, Mike McCarthy's still going to be calling the offense in Dallas. Yeah. And if the Bengals were 7th with 615 pass attempts last year, the Cowboys were 8th with 614. And as much as we like CeeDee Lamb, and he could get 200 targets, and I like Jake Ferguson, not enough to trade Travis Kelce for him, but I like Jake Ferguson. So let's just say for easy math, he gets 100 targets. Where does the other 300 go? Now, I think 200 is a ludicrous amount of targets to save for CeeDee Lamb. And I'm being somewhat facetious, but and then 100, but then who? Yeah. Is it Brandon Cooks, who's, I don't want to say cooked, but, you know, he's going into year 10 of his NFL career. Jalen Tolbert, I don't think he's ever going to be a thing. And Ryan Flournoy, to your point, is not your average rookie. No. He's 24 and a half years old. Mm-hmm. So, you know, but let's say the average NFL wide receiver draftee is 22. So by age range, he would be going into season 2 or 3 by this point. So he's older. He's been around. He's a really, really good athlete. Ran a 4.4 40. He has a 93rd percentile burst score, and he has an 87th percentile catch radius. Yeah. He's a guy that is going dirt cheap. And I would be a little bit less in on this one. What do you see as the potential downside? Like just him not getting on the field? What holds him back? Because I don't want to be the eternal optimist, and all I can see is, you know, how this works. What's the downside to Flournoy?
He tore his ACL twice in college, so that is always going to be a concern, right? But he recovered both times from that and went on to lead his team in receiving the following years and hasn't been injured since. So obviously that's going to be a big concern. And that I would think that honestly it's health that holds him back. This is a very hardworking player. You can just see it the more I research into him. Just like I said, D2 to JUCO to then fight back up to all the way to D1. Like that is a grind to go through all those divisions and schools and everything. And yeah, COVID season is in there. So it's just, I just think he hasn't had the most opportunity to succeed. Kind of a weird time coming out on top of a couple injury issues in college. So I think that's probably what would hold him back. But he seems like a stud. When I saw him, I went to the Senior Bowl. When I saw him, he was one of the bigger standout wide receivers. I had him as my fourth, right behind Lab McConkey. Easily just got target after target after target. It was really, really impressive. So I've been keeping my eye on him since then. And so happy he got drafted to such a good landing spot.
Yeah, I don't love the draft capital, but the fact that they drafted him as late as they did, well, it tells me something. It tells me we weren't going to let this guy go to the free agent pool and try to beat out 31 other teams to get him. We're going to lock him up with a 6th-round pick. We're going to bring him into camp. We're going to bring him into mini camp, all these things, and we're going to see what this guy can do. So he is someone I'm going to start searching as we get into the season. But if you don't have it, you might as well go get a couple of cheap shares because no one's really thinking about this right now. I think that one's a good one. Now, I want to give a shout out again to Rubio because he wasn't going to do it, Rubio. He wasn't. But you inspired him to uncork that one. And I think that's good because we've gotten far enough away now from rookie fever. I know there are some people that still like to get together with their workmates or college friends or whatever and, get together for a live rookie draft. But by and large, rookie season's mostly behind us. It's one of those things that I do all the time is I take and I go make a trade that makes it look like Ryan Flournoy is like a throw-in.
Yeah.
So you get him distracted with some bigger pieces. And then you come back to it and you're like, well, hey, what do you want just for Flournoy? Kind of interested there too. And then you might be able to get him thrown in cheap. Whereas if you just go directly at it and send them a trade for Ryan Flournoy, especially if you have a positive reputation in your league, people are going to be like, what does Jason know or what does Memphis know? What do they know that I don't know about Ryan Flournoy? So you can send them like a trade they probably wouldn't accept and throw him in there as a sweetener, and then you can work backwards to that deal. You don't want to tip your hand. You a poker player?
Gambling isn't quite legal in Georgia, but if it were, totally. I love card games. I really do, and I've played poker before. I can't play it a lot. It's kind of inaccessible.
you do have to live by the laws of the land, and they killed the good internet poker. But yeah, this is where you don't want to tip your hand. You don't want to show that your direct interest is Ryan Flournoy because you can get him super cheap. I would not be surprised if you draft only 3 or 4 rounds in your rookie draft. I would not be shocked if you were able to go to your waiver wire and he's probably sitting right there. It's a nice little steal. So anyway, you have one more. We're gonna take this one out with your hottest dynasty take for the 2024 dynasty season.
Kyle Pitts not only reestablishes himself as the dynasty tight end 1, out targets and outproduces Drake London next season as well.
Wow. Now, were you an OG Kyle Pitts truther?
To be completely honest with you, yes for rookie season, no for year 2, yes last year, yes this year.
Well, he was a really good blocker in that Arthur Smith offense. That's the one thing that's given me nervousness about my guy Pat Freiermuth. But I think you're right because the spiciest part is that he's going to outperform Drake London, which is I'm totally fine with that. But I don't even think he needs to go nuclear to get back up there. No. I mean, I think if he finishes as tight end 4, like if obviously Kelce does Kelce things and Mark Andrews stays healthy, I don't think we'll see TJ Hawkinson. Obviously, you got to throw in Sam Laporta, Trey McBride. But, dude, if he's in that mix because of his draft pedigree and his age, the guy is super young.
He is.
Even though he's going into what? This is year 4? Is that right?
This is year 4, and he's younger than Trey McBride, younger than Dalton Kincaid, and only 3 months older than Sam Laporta.
So you see to where and I think these are very reasonable numbers, and I think they're good numbers for a tight end, by the way. Mm-hmm. I think if he has 65, 70 catches, anything over 1,000 yards and 8 touchdowns, it's going to be to the moon. Mm-hmm. And if you're rooting for one quarterback over the other, you're really rooting for Kirk Cousins to be the starter this year. And I think as long as he's healthy, he will be, because he's going to pepper him with targets. And I have always been off of the Kyle Pitts train, but kind of like Justin Fields, I can't let my previous opinion of him change what I see, because something huge has changed. Something huge has changed for Kyle Pitts. It's called Kirk Cousins. Yeah. And if Kirk Cousins is bad or gets hurt, he's got Michael Penix Jr. Mm-hmm. Same goes for Drake London. Those guys have more insurance than just about anybody from a QB injury standpoint. So I love it. I will not be surprised. The part that will drive me crazy is that the Kyle Pitts stands will be insufferable on Twitter. Because you can just see it, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Oh, easily. It'll be, because it's been like, we have been living in hell, really. We've been very easy targets to make fun of on social media. So if he could silence those haters, that would be awesome. But yeah, I mean, he's taller than Drake London. He's faster than Drake London. He's heavier than Drake London, and actually has the 1,000-yard season. Drake London doesn't even have that. So I really think that Kyle Pitts has true alpha potential on this offense, could truly unlock as a fantasy asset and as an NFL player this year, and future, of course, for Dynasty.
And I know that did TJ Hawkinson get traded last year or the year before? I feel like I've lost
2 years ago.
So last year was his first full year in Minnesota. So yeah, he got 95 receptions. He didn't even crack 1,000 yards. 960 yards and 5 touchdowns.
14 games too.
You could even smooth. And exactly. He started 15. So he got 127 targets with Kirk Cousins. Yeah. And the guy who's the offensive coordinator came over from the Rams. And whatever you think about Tyler Higbee had some nice runs. And here's the one that could really absolutely melt faces and knock socks off. Is what if they decide to use Kyle Pitts the way that the Rams used either Puka Nacua or Cooper Kupp, just a bigger, faster, more athletic version? Yeah. It's over. It's a wrap. And because I've reached out to guys that are much better with NFL schemes than I am. You know, I look at the numbers. I look at some historical trends. I have a different sauce. But I'm like, how does Drake London fit into that Cooper Kupp, Puka Nacua, and to a degree Justin Jefferson type? And they're all like, they think that he'll do fine, he'll do okay in that role. But that's where I got this little bit of information, is that if Kyle Pitts could be used in that role, like moved all over the field, in the slot, outside, all over the place, and create plays for him. And if he gets 95 catches this year, he is the tight end one. Yeah. Is that fair?
No, it's easy. Easily he'll do. I think he is in Raheem Morris's mind, which, keep in mind, everyone, he was a wide receivers coach before he was a coordinator even on the Falcons. I think that he's just literally foaming at the mouth looking at the athlete that Kyle Pitts is. And I really do think that they are going to scheme up a ton of special stuff for him, and he's finally going to hit that ceiling. And for everyone that got him now, that maybe not those tight end one price tags from a couple seasons ago, but now this is the time to finally buy him.
Yeah, and I don't think you can get hurt with the investment. I just don't. I mean, if you're doing a startup, and what's he going? Tight end 4, 5 off the board, somewhere in there. He's got to be going ahead of Hawkinson because of the knee injury. Mm-hmm. And the quarterback change. But normally I don't like buying at what I feel like's the top of the market. Mm-hmm. But I don't think we've reached the top of his market. I think his market can go back up given all the factors we talked about. But that's the show, man. I apologize Jerry couldn't make it, and I apologize to the audience. He wanted to be here. But remind these people about Wake and Take. That's a great show. It's weird with podcasts because I'm used to listening to them on my AirPods, but like in my office at work, I'll put the show on and just like minimize the window, but I can hear it through my speakers.
Yeah.
I listen to that in the morning after our morning meeting. Tell us about Wake and Take and then what you and Matty Kiwoom have working up again on Trade Gods.
Yeah. So definitely, if you liked what I delivered here today, then you can find me again Monday through Friday on the Player Profiler Network at 10 a.m. Eastern. It's called Wake and Take. We're waking and taking, essentially talking news, talking fantasy football. We're doing drafts, whatever else is going on. And then Wednesday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern, me and my man Matty Kiwoom, we go through the fantasy football trade market, talk players to buy, players to sell, look at our own trades. So it's a really, really good show where you can learn a lot about the assets to acquire or get rid of and everything, and get some ideas for on how to even get trades done in your own league. So highly recommend that. And then you can follow me on social media at JFootballWine.
There you go. And I will say, if you're looking for a show that loves helping out their listeners, not that we don't, maybe we'll do a Q&A next week with Dan Williamson.
Nice.
I was going to do some more hot takes with Dan because, Dan's one of the best ball players in the world. He plays big stakes. He plays in a lot of volume. Mm-hmm. He is a super, super sharp guy. And I wanted to get some best ball hot takes that we could maybe leverage for some dynasty success. I don't know. We'll do a Q&A, but I will say this. Everybody's looking for trade help. And if you don't want to get the trade finder app or Dynasty Deluxe from Player Profiler, give those guys a follow over at Trade Gods and send them your trades. It doesn't guarantee you a spot, but if you show them that like you're a subscriber to both YouTube and like Apple and write a review that says Jason's awesome, I love the turtleneck.
Yeah.
That might be enough to get your trade question answered on their podcast. Is that fair?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, we used to go through and get them from the Discord, so you can join that as well. Playerprofiler.com/chat, and you could also just pop into our chat sometimes. We might throw those up there, or maybe even just answer in the chat if you just want the question answered.
And I do a horrible job of answering trade questions here on the podcast, probably because I'm trying to host and keeping the chat going a little bit. But I always answer trade questions over at patreon.com/Dynasty WarZone. You guys can head over there. You can join up for a month, see what it's about. Great group chat, great group of people. But man, Jason, thank you for stopping by.
Yeah, it was fun.
Super appreciate it. Got to get back. We need to like make this like monthly. Like you get a haircut, we do a podcast together. I don't get a haircut, I'll buy a new hat.
That's I need to do better about getting my haircut more regularly scheduled, to be completely honest. Sometimes it's like 4 months, sometimes it's a month. But either way, thank you for having me. This was a ton of fun.
and thank you to Derek for the super chat, dude. That's awesome. I'm glad you enjoyed the show. Thank you all. Oh, a new turtleneck. Anthony in the chat said new turtleneck every month. Like you could keep the turtleneck, mix up the colors.
I do have a bunch of different colors. I started just kind of wearing the black or the blue. Actually, sometimes it's a navy, but you can't really tell.
Are you old enough to guys? If you're looking for more Dynasty content, turn the show off. This thing's we've veered down a path. Are you old enough to remember the turtlenecks they had back in the day that they would wear under the coaches' jackets that had like the team logo or like the team spelled out like in a block font? Mm-hmm. I think we got to get on some of those vintage shirt websites and see what we can do for you. Now, are you a Falcons fan?
I grew up a Patriots fan, but when I moved to Atlanta, honestly working in the football space, it's just a whole, I like every team a lot, but a Falcons one would be sick, especially if it's black, like with a throwback. Oh, that could be sweet. But I have a Michigan one, and if you're a hockey fan, an Atlanta Thrashers embroidered turtleneck.
Look, dude, you ever been to a Lids?
Yes.
Dude, They got an embroidery gimmick right there, and they have like all the, like just slap a Falcon on this or put Falcons on it. And I'll get that UPS to you. Anthony also said some Zubaz. And for those of you that are way too young, those are like the zebra print pants that come in a variety of colors. Listen, I'm going to wrap this thing up before we start talking about starter jackets, starter hats. I mean, this thing could take a turn, but I want to thank everybody who tuned in, everybody in the chat, and of course our guest Jason. Please follow him everywhere. Support Wake and Take, support the Trade Gods. We'll be back next week with Dan Williamson for more Dynasty shenanigans. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you soon.
From the Podfather to you, I deeply appreciate you tuning in. And many ask, what can I do? What can I do to help support the hosts, the research they do, the production costs? Go to playerprofiler.com, Dynasty Deluxe, World Famous Draft Kit, Rankings, DFS Dominator, and of course, data analysis. Subscribe to any one of those, and you support all of us and take Player Profiler to the moon.